this time matters. So, if we could just start with prayer.
Well, let's go ahead and bow our head. Heavenly Father, we are so thankful for life, for strength, and for health. We are thankful for the opportunity to come together today to gain a little more knowledge, or if maybe we know some things, to just be reminded and to maybe make sure that we have these things in practice in our daily life. So we pray for your blessing upon our time together. May your Holy Spirit move upon our hearts and our minds, guiding us to the lifestyle and the diet that you would want us to follow so that we can have optimum health and be a witness to those around us. So we just pray for your blessing upon all those who have come today and upon those who will be sharing throughout this program. May everything be to your name's honor and glory, we pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
So to start off our afternoon, I'm going to have the pastor. This is our pastor.
And my name is Just get the whole thing.
Okay.
Then they don't have an excuse when they can't remember my name. They'll know how I do that.
Right. So he's going to talk about nutritional food.
We're gonna actually talk about those beautiful live foods over there. We're going to talk about eating live foods and how important it is. You probably, if you're older, you probably know how much our eating habits have changed over the last, and I won't make it sound like you're that old, but over the last 100 years, our eating habits have drastically changed.
You need to look somewhere else. You look at this table, there's always people here.
That's only because I'm going to sit over there when I'm done. But when you look at it, over time, our eating habits have changed as we have become more and more technologically sound in our world. We've learned to do things with food. We used to eat food a lot more like that, but now we're all in a hurry. Everybody's life is busy. Everyone's in a hurry. So we've learned how to process food, and it's pretty amazing because I remember getting some bread one time, and they actually were taking some of the vitamins and minerals out of the bread to put something else in it. So we got to that point in life where the processed foods and sugars and fats and salt have become a major portion of our diet, and they're causing a lot of problems in our health today. I was just looking up some numbers here just a few minutes ago, and over the years as I've done this, a few years ago, they said that the average American's sugar intake has gone up to where Americans now, the average American consumes somewhere between 60, and depending on how much they eat, 60 to 125 pounds of sugar a year. Now, that may not sound huge until you look at a 125-pound bag of sugar sitting here and realize that maybe that's what you're consuming. But what I want to encourage you today is, especially with what you're seeing on this table, these are vital to your health, and what you're going to see in just this one simple little illustration today is how much more these will do for your health than all these other foods that we see in our world around us today. So what I want to encourage you to do today is I want to encourage you to eat your fruits and your vegetables. You can call it vegetarian, you can call it vegan, you can call it plant slant, you can call it plant-based, but still, whatever it is you want to call it, make sure that this is the primary factor or the primary source of your nutrition. The other thing I want you to remember is this, and I've said it to you before, but the most important thing to remember is we don't feed our stomach, we feed ourselves. If I'm feeding my cells, then I need to find food that will break down well and my body will assimilate it. So when we look at these, I'm going to just share with you 7 different points about fruits and vegetables that you may already know, but if you're like me, sometimes you get caught up in the rat race we live in, and you find yourself eating a little bit more and more processed because you're in a hurry. So, a bag of chips, they're from the health food store. Those are okay. They may be from the health food store, but they're still not as healthy for you as corn on the cob. So corn chips are not as good for you as a good piece of corn straight from the stalk. So I want to talk about the 7 things that fruit and vegetables have that you simply don't find in meat and dairy products. And that's what I want you to remember as we look at it today. So the first thing I want you to think about is when you look at all of these fruits, the first thing I want you to remember is that all of these plants, all of them, have water in them. Water is one of our basic needs, and there is a huge portion of our society that walks around continually in a partially dehydrated state. In fact, just a little bit of information, many people exist in a state of inadequate hydration, sometimes called chronic dehydration. Nearly 55% of all U.S. school children and adolescents are inadequately hydrated. At least 518,000 people are hospitalized in the United States each year for dehydration. And I can vouch for that. My mother was one of those people. In fact, she lived in Chattanooga before she passed away quite a few years ago. But she was about 76 years old. My nieces and nephews all lived in the same town. No one had heard from my mother for 3 days. My niece went over to her house, and she didn't answer the door. My niece got the manager to come let her in. My mother was laying there, still conscious, but she was laying in her bed. She was so dehydrated she couldn't get out of her bed. They took her to the hospital, and fortunately, over the next few days, they were able to get her hydrated again. But it's a very, very serious thing, and what we don't realize is how important water is to everything that our body does. All the functions of our bodies, water is greatly involved. So what's another very important thing that we have in all of these fruits and vegetables? We have fiber. Fiber is vitally important to the way your body processes, your digestion, all of those things. Fiber is vitally important. Again, meat and dairy products have no fiber. If you want to get fiber, you're going to have to go to the plant world to get it. Few Americans are getting the recommended 25 to 30 grams of fiber per day that they need. And we're told that eating at least 30 to 40 grams of fiber from a variety of plant foods can lower your risk of heart disease, cancer, intestinal disorders, and other diseases. And fiber is not found in meat or dairy products. So number 3, when we look at these, we find out that in all of these vegetables and fruits, we have a lot of vitamins and nutrients. I want to just mess up my thing here just a little bit. I'm going to pull out this. Oh no, that's not it. Where did it go? They're hiding it. There it is. Broccoli. I want to pull out broccoli, and I want you to just listen now to what all we can get when we eat broccoli. Broccoli is full of vitamin A, thiamine, riboflavin, niacin, vitamin B6, vitamin C, vitamin E, folate, and vitamin K. It has many minerals in it: calcium, potassium, iron, magnesium, zinc, selenium, phosphorus, manganese, and choline. All of those vitamins and minerals are found in broccoli. So if you're eating broccoli, you're going to be starting to get headed towards what you need in your daily diet for those things. They also carry a lot of nutrients. I don't have one up here right now. How many of you like baked potatoes? We all like baked potatoes. How many of you like baked potatoes smothered in butter? I love baked potatoes smothered in butter. When I was growing up, my dad was sitting across from me one day, and we were both having a T-bone steak in our kitchen that he had fried. And as he sat there, I'd never seen it before in my life, but he gets out the butter, and he puts butter all over the top of that steak. And I went, wow, what do you do that for? And he goes, oh, it makes it way more juicy. So guess what? I started putting butter all over my steak. So let me just see if I can keep adding a little more cholesterol to everything I'm eating. So anyway, if you eat a baked potato, though, it's got 161 calories in a basic potato. There's only 0.2 grams of fat. There's 4.3 grams of protein, 36 grams of carbohydrates, 3.8 grams of fiber. There's vitamin C, vitamin B6, potassium, again manganese, magnesium, phosphorus, niacin, and folate. So all of those things are in one potato. If you start making your diet go from closer to what God made things and start pulling out the processed foods, start eliminating some meat and dairy, you're going to be amazed at what happens and the shift that your body takes. The next thing I want you to look at is we've got a handout here. We're not going to look at all of these though, but these also contain antioxidants and phytochemicals, which are really important in fighting off disease. So I want you to just look at those two top paragraphs with me. It says, fruits and vegetables are nutrient-dense foods that provide a variety of vitamins, minerals, and dietary fiber with few calories. They look good and taste great, providing powerful antioxidants and phytochemicals. Antioxidants are chemicals in fruits and vegetables that protect the body from damage caused by free radicals, also known as cancer-producing agents. Phytochemicals are organic components in plant foods that are good for disease prevention and overall health. The most important aspect of eating fruits and vegetables is the variety of colors and pigments that they have. There are 7 main color groups that are recommended to eat. And we're not going to go through those, but I did that so you could just see and look at all of those. And then the last item, number 7, that you find when you eat a plant-based diet, when you look at all of this good food, is that there's 0 cholesterol in all your plant-based food. Again, the only place that you find cholesterol is in meat and dairy products. So here's the other thing that I want to encourage you to do. When my wife and I have done lifestyle seminars, and we talk about changing the way that you eat, I want to encourage you to think about eating simple. And sometimes when we think about changing, if I eat, like when I first started to transition over to a pure vegetarian diet, I was eating a lot of meat, I was eating dairy products all the time, and so I slowly started pulling those things out of my diet. And then everybody starts to panic. Well, what are we going to eat? What are we going to eat? What we started to do is realize that if you're eating as close to the way God made it, a salad is simple, it is fast, it has a lot of nutrients in it, and it's going to give you what you need. You can add to that, you can add to get some proteins, you can add garbanzo beans, you can add kidney beans, you can add avocado to get some really good fats. There's all kinds of things you can add to just a salad and make it very filling, and yet it's something that you just pull some things together and you're ready to eat. The same thing with when you think about other foods. You know, we used to eat just a lot of beans and brown rice. Those things are very simple to make. They don't take very long, and all of a sudden you've got a meal. You can get corn tortillas, and you can have a burrito. You can add avocado. You can add, some of the salsa and different things. But eating simple is one of the best ways that you can find to improve your overall diet. So my suggestion today is to think about all of these good foods and start trying to get them into a greater part of your lifestyle. Start trying to weed out certain things. Maybe say, I'm going to start eating less chips or processed things, and I'm going to bake a potato. You know, the one thing about baking a potato is you can stick it in the oven and go do other things while it's baking. You don't have to stand there and watch it, right? So think about how you eat and how important these things are, and especially think about this. The God that created you, that made you the way that you are, He's the one that gave this diet at the very beginning of time. In Genesis chapter 1 and verse 29, this is the diet that He laid out for man. Fruits, grains, nuts, and vegetables. So my challenge to you is to start thinking about how you can simplify, how you can start pulling out some of these processed things and just eat more the way God intended for us to eat. And that's it. So I hope they're ready for round 2. Yes, they are.
Okay, so I'm going to show you a salad. I'm Darlene, and I'm going to show you a salad from, how many of you have heard of Mega Missionary? So, Mega Missionary was started by Mercy Ballard. She had MS, she had an autoimmune disease, and she was a doctor from her country, and then when she moved here to America, she became a nurse, and she developed MS, and she went to doctor after doctor after doctor, and nobody had any answers, so she did her own research, and she made her own protocol for autoimmune disease. And what she found out is we have to really get our gut microbiome balanced. A lot of us don't have balanced microbiome. And if you can get that balanced, a lot of our diseases are just from the gut. And if you've heard of Neil Nedley, he even said that depression is a result from a poor gut microbiome. But I'm going to do, so they have a class called Med Missionary, and Joanne and I took it. And I had a friend that recently graduated, and she asked me to go on there. And she used to have allergies all her life. And in the spring, she could never go out because she couldn't tolerate it. She sneezed a lot. So her and her husband, when they got married, they just stayed indoors during the spring, and they were both sad because they're very outdoorsy people and they enjoy the flowers and everything. And she started the diet, the protocol on her. And this spring was her first ever to be able to go outside. She no longer had asthma or issues, and she was so excited because she got to go see the flowers and go hiking. But anyway, they also, now Med Missionary has a ambassador program too. So if you have any questions about the health, you can go through anyone who went through the Med Missionary program, and you can email them and ask them how to do it. But I am going to do on page 103, and I'm going to, you guys can look at this. And if you want a book, I'm going to order like a whole bunch of them. And so I'm going on page 103, and I'm just doing a plain, simple garden salad. And this is probably more about the dressing, but before you even start it, they want you to, did you get the recipe? So they want you to marinate the red onions, and they want you to use a mandolin. How many of you guys know what a mandolin is? So I'm going to start with the red onion, and I cut it. I'm going to peel it. The extra good part. The dry layer off. And I don't cut the end. I just cut the top off, because then you can hang on to it, and your onion won't fall apart. And you just, so first of all, they want you to marinate the onion, the radish, and the cucumber in lemon and salt. So I'm just going to squeeze some lemon in here. And I have some that have already been marinating. Have you guys ever seen a porcelain knife? Yeah, question. So you, supposedly the metal knives react with the acids, and like a lemon or a tomato. So you want to use a porcelain knife because it doesn't react with the acids. And then, so we're going to do a quarter teaspoon of salt. And in Dead Missionary, they use unrefined salt. And I used to be, before we moved here, I used to collect salt, because there's different kinds of salt. And I'm going to use some Morton salt for the little girl with the yellow umbrella. You guys use that? Okay, so throw that away. It only has 2 minerals. Dead Missionary, they use real salt. But have you heard of Barbara O'Neill? She uses Celtic salt, which I have some here. And have you seen the pink Himalayan salt? So the pink Himalayan salt has 72 minerals, and the Celtic salt has 80 minerals. And the Morton's salt only has 2. And we need those minerals. Pastor was talking about drinking water, and so we put this in. So did you know that there's a certain way to drink water? You need the minerals for proper water exchange because in our cells we have salt channels. And if you're dehydrated and you're just drinking the water, and you're low in minerals, that water will run right through you. So I do home health out in Louisville, and as a gray-haired lady, I have to use the restroom a lot. But what Barbara O'Neill said is you take, in my car I have a jar of Celtic salt, and I will take a pinch of that and put it on my tongue and drink water. And I don't have to go to the bathroom as much because my body's absorbing the water more than I have. Okay, so that's your salad. We're going to marinate, we're going to mandolin the onion. And it says to do it really thin. I like it really thin. Okay, and we're just going to put that and put it in there. Marinate. And then we're going to do a couple of radishes. Already know some. So when you cut the radish, make sure you have a little handle. You don't want to cut too close because you'll leak your fingers. So go really fast. Okay. And then the cucumber. And they want you to marinate. Some fruits and vegetables are harder to digest, and marinating these 3 in lemon and salt will help break it down a little bit so that it's easier to digest, and it'll go right through your tummy really good. And when you soak it, it says here it helps release the enzymes. There's one called myrosinase, and it helps unlock the healing properties of cancer. It'll help you combat cancer. And you can just mix that up and let that soak up. And that's to sit there for 30 minutes. And while that's sitting, I'm gonna make the dressing. And I just use this NutriBullet. And how many of you guys know how to pick an avocado? So when you pick an avocado, you want to look for the skin in there, because when it comes off, it starts to oxidate. want, when you touch it, it just has like a give, like a, I'm gonna get a spoon. And so we're just gonna pull this out like that. And that's in there. Nice and clean. Just do this. Out. Okay. So they want 2 avocados. And also lemon juice. So we're talking about bone health, right? Lemon juice has sodium, potassium, calcium, manganese, and I want to say protein, but it's just in trace amounts. Okay. And you're going to want, oh, I used my knife. We're going to switch it up to a lemon, a lime. And basically this is just, so the avocado does not turn brown. So it stops it from oxidizing. And then we're going to put in half a teaspoon of unrefined salt. And 3/4 of a cup of water. Most people, when they think of salad dressing, they think of oil. But if you're sick and you want to get better, they eliminate oil. It's not to say you can't go back to it, but just to eliminate some things that. Okay. double or triple the recipe so we can all taste it. So I'm not going by that. So I'm just going to cut it. And I drank this in water. And how many of you use vinegar to wash your vegetables? Or have you heard of that? Because if you have organic food, a lot of times the bugs will go in it more than the other. And if you dunk your vegetables in water with a little bit of vinegar, it will, the bugs don't like it and will smell it. So this is all organic. Ed Missionary, they say to eat all organic because you don't want any of the pesticides in there.
Darlene, where do you get your produce?
I get it at Harris Teeter. She wanted to know where I got my produce. And I get it at Harris Teeter because I just find their produce is better than Lowe's.
I know because you can go get organic, but it's been laying around for so long, it's disgusting. You know, I say, oh, probably buy some pesticide, looks fresh.
Yes. Also, does anyone have questions about anything here? So, our topic is on bone health, and you should want to stay away from foods that deplete your bones of calcium. I remember growing up, they used to, they eat a lot of dairy, right? But dairy actually has a lot of phosphorus, and phosphorus will deplete your calcium supply. So things that have a lot of phosphorus are animal products, soda. Okay, so, and there's our dressing. I'll just do that. And then I just love arugula. You guys know what arugula is? It tastes really peppery, so I'll put some of that. And then when we get ready to eat, I'm going to put this. I cut up tomatoes and the green onions. I'll put them all together, and I'll put the dressing on the side. So you can put the dressing that you want on it. And so at home, I like celery, so I'll put celery in my salad. And then I'll get carrots. How many of you peel your carrots? You peel your carrots every time you eat. So, have you tried this one? This is called Cal Organic, and this is from California, and it's a lady that is all organic. Try this carrot. It is the most flavorful carrot. And what I do is I take a bristle brush and I'll scrub it, but I won't peel it because vitamin D is on the skin of the carrot. And we need vitamin D because calcium latches onto vitamin D to get into your bones and your cells. So if you're low on vitamin D, you can't absorb the calcium. So make your salad, sit out in the sun and eat your salad. But I do this. So I don't peel my carrots, and I just cut the tips off, and I'll slice and roll. These are harder, so I can't. You can do them on a mandolin, but I have some mandolins at home, but I can't find them. The heavy-duty stainless steel French mandolins, and they'll cut just about anything. But I usually just do the carrots on here. And if you have a food processor, you can put it in the food processor. And my dad was a health nut, and he's the one that told me not to peel your carrots. And also, when you cut your carrots, don't go all the way to the top, because if you have any fertilizer or anything and this is coming up at the top, you want to just leave a little room like that so that you don't get some of the fertilizer is anyone have any questions? Almost done here.
Do you have to worry about the sodium elevating your blood pressure, putting that in your water?
Our blood, no, because we have our blood regulates that, and through our ureter. And there's a really good video by Barbara O'Neill. She explains that how you have through your kidneys regulate the salts through there, and your blood goes through the kidneys through the little channels. And if you're low, it will take out the salt, and if you're low, it'll put in salt. If you're high, it'll take out the salt. and I'll mix it all up, and when we get ready to eat, I'll put the dressing right next to it, and we can decide which one. Okay? Let's see if you like this next. So we're gonna have Brenda go next.
Sorry about that, I was taking advantage of this phone back over there.
Oh, yeah. So,
Would we order it through the
I'm gonna get a bowl and you get it from us. We can,
when you say yes?
the whole break, I'm not sure. I paid, $35 for that, but I have to see. I'm gonna say
All right. Who likes food? We are going to be making the sticky ginger sesame tofu veggie one pot. I kind of found it funny when it said one pot. Not one pot. Because you have to boil noodles, you've got to cook your tofu, then you cook your veggies, and then you boil it. But I went online and I was looking specifically for a recipe that was both plant-based and good for your bones. And this was one that popped up and it sounded good. So I went, okay, let's give it a try. And the first thing you're going to do is you're going to get your noodles and you're going to cook them. I use fried noodles, rice noodles, and this is the particular one that I use today. You want to pass it around? Where do you get those? I got those at Food Line. Thank you. Certainly. You can probably get them online in the store anywhere, but that one was Food Line. So you boil that up, and you need to be real careful with rice noodles, because rice noodles will cook away to absolutely nothing if you boil them too long. So it's always better to stop while they're still al dente, and they'll keep cooking after that. But keep boiling them, and you'll go back and you'll have a pot of starch. Do I know that by experience? Okay, and when they're done, they're going to look just like this. I'm trying to do everything when I'm not supposed to be using the hand. You take that off, you rinse it with cold water, and you take some chili flakes, pour that in there as much as you like. If you like it really spicy, or if you like it less, don't even have to use it if you don't want to. And then lime juice, and mix it up, and you can set it to the side. Okay, so that's our rice.
Lime juice so they don't stick.
The right lime juice helps them not stick together. Yes. Okay, so you boil that up first. Okay, then the tofu that's going to go in. I'm going to put this aside right here. How many of you have cooked tofu before? Okay, so it comes in a packet with water, right? So you need to dry it out. Okay, what they recommend is you put a towel down, get the towel down, put it on there, and then put something heavy on top of it. So that's what I did. Okay? So I just dried them out for a while, and they get really heavy and wet. So what we're going to do is we're going to crisp up our tofu. We're going to start by putting olive oil in the pan. If you don't like olive oil, you can use pretty much any oil that you prefer. I happen to love cooking with olive oil. And you're gonna take your tofu, that's all cubed, and you're gonna start cooking it. Okay? She's my hand right now. And so this needs to cook for about 5 minutes. Then you're gonna take that off the heat, and you're gonna set it aside. That's what this is for. Then we're gonna have a good time with all the vegetables. The more color, the better. It's like eating, you eat with your eyes. And this one, you can use any vegetable that you happen to like. So we have all 3 color peppers. What color pepper? Yellow, orange, green, and red. I love peas, so I put the sweet peas in there. Okay, and carrots. You can put onion. Onion's good. Just slice it all up. Whatever one you want to put in there. That's the great part about this recipe. It's a vegetable you love, put it in there. Broccoli, excellent for all health vegetable to eat. Lots of broccoli. You even have a picture over there we can show you later. This is going to take a little while, so I apologize. It's going to take so long to cook it. But it's going to take a little while.
Brenda,
Yes.
if we didn't want to fry the tofu, can we bake it?
I can see my mom.
Yeah.
That's
I
another
do
option.
a recipe like that. You can bake it. There are some recipes where it says you can sprinkle some cornstarch or arrowroot on it and then bake it until it becomes a little golden and then you use it in your recipe.
That sounds good.
So that way you don't have to use oil, if you are on a no oil diet. And another alternative.
You can air fry it too.
That's
Air
right.
fry ours.
It comes out crispy. And coconut oil is supposed to have a higher tolerance for heat, so that's another option.
Do you put anything in there with
You
it?
can just do a cooking spray, so
Okay.
it doesn't stick on the bottom.
Okay.
And then we just cook it, I think we do about 375.
Okay.
And it only takes about 7 minutes. And then you can shake up the, little basket.
Because I like crispy tofu.
Yeah, it gets it really, because it dries it out.
This is not going to be that crispy. But I personally, when I'm out at a Chinese restaurant, I like crispy tofu in my drunken noodles. And yes, I like drunken noodles. Not that I like to drink much. And this, it's going to take a little while. So I apologize. This is not the best one to demonstrate.
But we have already one made.
We have a huge
We're
one
just
made.
talking about it.
So after the tofu is all done, you take it and you set it aside, and we'll finish this batch up back there when the next recipe is being displayed.
So we can even take this back there and start on the.
Okay? Now we're going to do our vegetables. Our vegetables, we're going to do a little bit different oil. All more stuff right here. We love to display everything. So we're going to use our sesame oil. I have something for the sauce that is vinegar, so really can't tell. I'm not sick, so. Apple oil.
So this
Which one is oil?
there's some that's oil.
I use the oil. Does that look like oil? That's hurt yourself a little bit, and the brain just goes right away. Okay? So we'll heat up the pan, we'll get some oil, sesame seed oil going. You're going to let a little bit extra flavor to the vegetables. And we're going to put all the vegetables in, and we're going to cook them. Some people like them crispy, al dente. Some like them a little more done. If you want the biggest bang out of it, eat it raw. Second biggest bang is al dente. So you still have all that good nutrition going in there. We're going to go ahead and we're going to try it. So we're going to make this very colorful, spring-like. So we're going to do all our vegetables. Let me switch sides. You didn't practice, in case you didn't notice that. people like me have a hard problem with green peppers. I can eat every other color, but green pepper and we talk a lot. And I really don't like talking a lot with it.
Yeah, I understand green peppers are just red peppers that are not fully ripe, and so.
Is that right?
So it's actually healthier to eat the other colors, because they have all the nutrients developed.
And if you don't have enough time, like I don't have enough time, I love the shoestring carrots. They're all nice and bite-sized, and you don't have to spend a whole lot of time working on them. And we're gonna steam those up.
So about 3 minutes, that's when all the colors become brighter and they taste like they are cooked, but they still have enzymes in them. You know, that's the issue with cooking all these veggies, that we are losing the enzymes if we cook them too long. So then our body can make enzymes, but you know, it has to work. We eat the raw stuff or not so cooked, and we are giving the digestive system a little light. Of course, some people take enzymes these days, digestive enzymes of all kinds, but not put enzymes in the very stuff that we are eating, so it's good.
Excellent. That's gonna take a minute before it gets done, and then when we're done with that, we're going to take minced up ginger and 5 cloves of garlic. Everybody loves garlic, right? If not, your loved ones are gonna walk away from you after you eat this, because that pot in there has like almost 10 or 15 cloves in there. So it's gonna taste really good. Garlic is very good for you in so many different ways. So once that's cooked up, we'll add the garlic and the ginger, and then that cooks for a couple more minutes. And just till everything gets nice and cooked down a little bit, the flavor gets through everything. And then we have this lovely murky stuff that we're going to put in there. You're probably going, what's that? Well, that includes, this sauce is made out of soy sauce, or you can use the tamari, or coconut and aminos, whichever you prefer. Maple syrup, amino acid, yes. It has maple syrup. It has rice vinegar in it. Right there. And if you want it spicy, who loves sriracha? Okay. This is in it, as well as some orange juice and some salt. Just a little bit of salt for extra flavor. It does call for pepper, but pepper is not the best thing for your body, so we exclude that. If you need a pepper in it, add one of these really super hot peppers that we did not put in it. So these little peppers are hot. Okay? So if you're going to use that in there, if you like it spicy, you know, just be real careful when you cut them, take the seeds out. Because this heat is in the seeds. Okay? And then chop them up as fine as you want, and then cook them in there with the rest of the vegetables as well. Be careful if you cut them up. If you haven't used hot peppers before, maybe use gloves or something else, because that residue all over your fingers, if you're like me and you go really blind for a little while until that heat is out of your eyeballs. So I like to use the gloves, because it's real quick. Slice them up, put them in, take the gloves off, and you're done. You don't have to worry about any residue. But for you, we forgot to cut it up, so you're not going to get it today. And once you put the sauce in, you're going to make a little slurry out of cornstarch and water, and you're going to let that thicken up. Okay? And then when this is all done and it's thickened up and the vegetables are right al dente or done, you're going to put the noodles in a bowl, and then you're going to put this on top of that. And if it's too spicy, who knows what to do if something is too hot? Spicy hot. Start over. No. You do not need to start over. Something sour. Okay? So if something is too salty, you would put something sweet to knock down the salt. If it's too spicy, you put something tart in it to knock down that flavor. Yes. Don't throw the whole pot away. Okay? It's so you can make it better. So again, if it's salty, something sweet. If it's spicy, something tart. Okay, and since we're using lemon juice and oranges in here, that's a perfect thing to add back into it to take out that heat. Okay? And once everything's all mixed, it's all pretty in your bowl, we're going to add some cilantro if you like cilantro. Who likes cilantro? I love cilantro. My friend thinks that it's great hairball material. It sounds really bad, but she sounds like a cat with a hairball. She eats cilantro. Grossest thing ever. Found out the hard way, a Mexican restaurant with her, and all of a sudden she started doing that. It's like, I'm a friend, what's wrong with you? Cilantro. Some people say it tastes like soap. Yes. Okay, you're a soap person. I love it. I think it's spicy without that burn. Tastes good. Puts a little kick in it, but it doesn't hurt me. But soap, it's really weird. It's almost like that one sound where either you hear whirl or, what's the other word? It's like people hear different sounds from the exact same thing that's playing. Pretty strange. My husband does that to me. I hear whirl and he hears the other word. It's very strange. Are we ready? That's good. You got the garlic and the ginger? Yes, it's all in there, yes. All right. Now we add the sauce. Mix it all up and make it taste good. You can cook that just a little bit, and then we'll add the.
Once we add the cornstarch, it's going to take a microwave, so we're done.
For the interest of saving time, we mixed everything together. We didn't just put the noodles in a bowl. We just mixed it all together so they're easier to scoop out. So, any questions on any of this?
Earlier you mentioned something about being careful with adding pepper because it's not. Were you talking about black pepper?
Yes, black pepper. Who recommends doctors with black pepper, please?
It's another
It's an irritant to what?
the stomach.
To the stomach.
The lining of the stomach. So there are the spices is what gives the food flavor. If we just make veggies, it wouldn't be anything wrong. But if we add spices, it makes them more interesting. But we just have to be careful with certain spices like pepper. And actually, from my study, all the peppers except for the cayenne are irritant to the stomach. So I'm not sure. This one has chili pepper. I'm not an authority in what the difference is. For me, I like to avoid spicy stuff because I have a sensitive stomach. And I avoid vinegar also. And I just use lemon or lime. So that is a healthier option. But yeah, it's in there. So.
Why do you avoid vinegar?
Because we don't have an enzyme to metabolize the vinegar, and it actually ends up raising the acidity, like lowering the pH in the body. So in order to be healthy, we want to be more alkaline. Lemons and limes have an alkaline ash. Vinegar is acid. Not only. I don't know. So once in a while, we just think if you ate some vinegar, then you just want to make sure to make it up with other things and just eat lots of alkaline forming foods. Which we had a lecture about alkaline and acid balance. So alkaline for him food would be all the raw veggies and fruits. And out of the grains, millet is more alkaline. Pretty much anything cooked tends to be a little bit acid, but of course animal products are the most acid, so we don't use those, so we don't have to worry about those. But you know, we try to avoid animal products because they are acid forming, but then if you use vinegar, they still can get that acidity. And that acidity is going to eat up our bones, so I guess the doctor will ask more about it. Okay. So I'm just adding this, and just we'll take this back and we'll have Debbie show us some pictures. Good to see you, Steve. It's been a few years.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am, yes.
Just trying to clear a spot for you.
Hi, my name is Joni Henderson, and I'm going to be demonstrating a pretty simple, really healthy, good cookie. They come from a book called Depression: The Way Out from Dr. Neil Nebley, and so they're specifically for depression. They're really high in omega-3s. It's when you're suffering from depression, the omega-3s can really, really help. So, and you know, if we're going through something or anything, we always want something sweet. So it's going to be something sweet. Let's go to the most healthy alternative we can find. So, but on the other hand, these cookies are really good because as I was kind of looking into it, since they're high in your omega-3 fatty acids, they are important to your bone health. Walnuts and flax seeds is the main ingredient. Really important to bone health. Because the omega-3s increase calcium absorption, reduce urinary calcium excretion, and they have magnesium and manganese, which are important, and a lot of it's found in walnuts. Walnuts are actually superior, pretty much ounce per ounce, than salmon in your omega-3s. So that's pretty awesome. So to save time, this is really a quick, easy recipe. I was going to make a cheesecake, but the cheesecake was a little more involved, so this is a pretty quick, easy recipe. I kind of go in spurts of making it and not making it. My daughter just recently had a baby. She wanted something healthy, and so I said, oh, these would be really good for you. So we've been making a lot of these actually. So first we're going to start with 2.5 cups of ground walnuts. Simply buy whole walnuts or walnut pieces and throw them in your food processor or your blender and just let them blend up. Depends on what texture you want. So if you want the texture to be a little crunchy, bigger walnut pieces, leave some bigger walnut pieces, or you can ground it really, really fine so you don't have chunky walnut pieces. So we're starting off with 2.5 cups of ground walnuts. You can see a few of the chunky pieces. I'll just dump that in the bowl.
I have a question. Is that English walnuts or black walnuts?
English walnuts. You can sure black walnuts will go down. Yeah, be really good. Yeah. These are just your plain old, walnuts. And then the recipe calls for whole wheat pastry flour. We pretty much do gluten-free, so I substitute oat flour. You can make your own oat flour in the blender. You just throw your oats in. When I make waffles or whatever, I just throw my oats in the blender and make my own oat flour. You can purchase oat flour. So if you want to be really careful, you can get gluten-free oats, or you can just use regular oats if you're trying to avoid the gluten. So next is your oat flour, which I just blended this myself and made oat flour, which is great for waffles. Oat flour is really, really good for waffles. Now it does say, if something calls for whole wheat flour, oat flour is a little lighter and fluffier, so when something calls for whole wheat flour, you want to add a little more oat flour, if that makes sense. You don't have to, but I added just a little more because these cookies would get a little sticky if I don't add a little more. So what I'm saying is you substitute oat flour for whole wheat flour, just add a little more oat flour. Next is a teaspoon of salt. This is containing salt. Put that in there. Use the real salt, I think Darlene had talked about the salts. Then 1/3 cup of ground flaxseed. Okay, you can buy ground flaxseed, as you know, but it's really better to grind your own flaxseed. It preserves the omega-3s better than just buying a bag of it, because the air hits it and it starts, the omega-3s start decomposing the oil. So just keep your flax seeds in the freezer. You're going to need a coffee grinder. I've never had success in a blender grinding flax seeds, so I just use a little coffee grinder as we use the flax seeds. And so that's really your dry ingredients. So for your wet ingredients, once again, the flax seeds and the walnuts together is just such a rich source of omega-3s. This is just a really good recipe for many reasons. Then we've got your pure maple syrup. You don't want your sweetened fructose or whatever maple syrup. This is just pure maple syrup. So we're gonna we do this separately. Usually we'd get a spatula and clean that out. Those are maple syrup and then some vanilla. Just mix those together. And those are your wet ingredients. I'm just going to dump that in there. Mix this. Then what I have here are carrot chips. It's just crazy. In the 90s, pretty much our kids grew up on carrot chips. They didn't really know what chocolate was. Now they know what it is because dark chocolates are all over the place, right? There's easy access to dark chocolates, the high cacao, which is, they say there's good benefits in that. So, it's really hard to find carrot chips. This recipe calls for carrot chips, and we would use carrot chips because they're caffeine free, they're no theobromine, so they are better for you than chocolate, but a lot of people will use your dark chocolate, and I know they say there's pros and cons, they say there's health benefits. If you're going to use the dark chocolate, just get the highest cacao you can, ingredients in there. But Amazon does have carrot chips, so you can get carrot chips. They're just kind of pricey. Chatfield's is a good brand, and I don't know, you just can't. You can find carrot powder. Does anyone know where you can find carrot chips around here? Awesome. I tried Whole Foods. I called Sprouts. I went to Publix. And then I called friends. My friend had some. Okay, so isn't that looking beautiful? Just sticky and nice. I'm going to add the carrot chips. Just get that mixed up. And then I always use, probably most of you do, always use parchment paper. Makes cleanup so much easier and hardly sticks. So that's pretty much ready, as you can see, nice and sticky. I also thought about trying this recipe without the carrot chips as a pie crust. I haven't done it yet, but I think it might make a good pie crust. I haven't tried that, but I'm going to try that. Another thing, I actually prefer these cookies with no carrot chips, or anything. I just like them, so you don't have to put anything in, or you can put raisins. So that's really, you can just change things up. So what I'm going to do, it's just helpful. Just put a little of that on my hands, and then it says to just drop them, I think, and push them down. But I just like to make a little ball. And it's just great, holds together, really nice, as you can see. And then I would just press it down on the parchment, or you can use a spoon, but fingers seem to work best. And they always cook nice and they stick together. I'll show you the delicious ingredients that you get to taste. And you need to watch them after 12 minutes. I always check the bottom. They start getting dark pretty quickly, but 12 to 15 minutes is a good time. So that's it on the cookies. Pretty simple, really.
So why are we using maple syrup and it's more expensive? Why not sugar?
Yeah, maple syrup, I think also it's going to have good things like magnesium, and it probably has calcium too. Some of the So, yeah, so the maple syrup is, yeah.
Yeah, so anything that is more refined is going to draw nutrients from our bodies to metabolize. For example, sugar will draw chromium. So other places, so the more natural we can be, the better. And another thing with the carrot chips, I've noticed that some of them have hydrogenated oil, and that's, you have to watch that. So this is not a good thing for.
Comes from the carrot pod, and if you taste carrot raw, it's actually kind of sweet. So this pod,
So yes,
Hang on,
carrot is
free.
like a bean. It's actually, in the Bible, it talks about John the Baptist eating locusts. It's not the insect, it's actually a type of bean, and it's about this big. I've seen one. So they grind it, and it looks like cocoa, but it's a lot more nutritious. It has B vitamins, and it's not as bitter as the cocoa, so because of that, it doesn't require as much sweet. You can find the powder.
that's easy to find, easier.
Yeah.
There's a really good recipe with carrot powder, maple syrup, and avocados. It's a pudding. And if you just Google that, there's like 3 ingredients: maple syrup, avocados, and carrot powder. It's just, you never know. It's really, really good. It's good. Okay, anything else?
I have a question. I'm looking for the information how to achieve the 1,500 milligrams of calcium required.
Oh, yeah, Dr.
And
Yes.
so how, with the food that is prepared, how much should we eat of it to get the 1,500 milligrams?
Yeah, so usually I don't count calories or calcium. If you eat a variety of foods of different colors, either rainbow, we are going to get the necessary nutrients. But if you are in doubt, you can look up how many milligrams each food has.
So, we're gonna have everybody come get your plates to try what's been made, and then we'll have, Dr. Jess do our talk, while you guys are trying it, okay?
All right. So this is a really short talk, and informal. So between bites, if you have a question, just ask anytime. Judith, you already had one? No. Okay. I thought you raised your hand. Okay. So quick disclaimer. It's going to be about osteoporosis. I don't treat osteoporosis, so I just treat the effects of osteoporosis. So I'm not really an expert on this, although I'm studied in it. And I have to see patients who have this all the time. I don't treat it. So ask any questions, but I might not have all the answers. All right, so let's get started. So what we're going to talk about today is, and excuse me a little bit, I got something going on, some drainage. What is it? Who's at risk for it? What are some of the causes of osteoporosis? The symptoms that patients can present with, what are some of the risk factors that you can actually change, which is what today's all about, and what are some of the non-modifiable risks, some of the things that we're born with. How do you detect it, and how do we treat it? And then we'll have some time for questions if we get through this quickly. Oh, and by the way, these pictures I put on here, these are all Iceland pictures that we recently. So this is a cave called the Yoda Cave. You see why? It's really just an amazing place. All right, so the definition of osteoporosis kind of changes a little bit based on who's talking to you. The National Osteoporosis Foundation says it's a bone disease that occurs when the body loses too much bone, or it doesn't put enough down, or both. And the World Health Organization describes it in a way that we usually use in medicine, which is bone mineral density by a DEXA scan, which is a test that we'll get into later. That is 2.5 standard deviations below the normal, and that's an average value for a young, healthy 30-year-old woman. So if you've got 2.5 standard deviations below, you have osteoporosis. So who gets it? Well, after the age of 30, your bone mineral density diminishes pretty dramatically. It increases more for women than men, at least a higher rate. About 1 in 3 women, so about 30%, 33% of women will sustain a fragility fracture over the age of 50. Whereas in men, it's about 1 in 5. We used to think men didn't really even get this disease, but they do, and more frequently now than ever, believe it or not. Following menopause, so after women hit menopause, their estrogen levels start to go down. They lose bone mineral density at a rate of 2% per year. So it really becomes a factor after menopause. Non-Hispanic, which is white, Caucasian, Asian females with a family history of a fracture or a family history of osteoporosis are at the highest risk. You have to think about the older, sort of frail, white female, hunched back. She has osteoporosis, almost always. So what are some of the causes of osteoporosis? Well, it's an imbalance of forming bone and taking bone away. Bone is living tissue. It's like an organ that's constantly being remodeled. It's growing and it's being taken away at all times. And the 2 main cells that are involved in that within our bone are the osteoclasts, which are cells that remove bone, and then you have osteoblasts, which put bone down, lay bone down, grow bone. And it's a dysfunction or an uncoordinated effort between these 2 cells that produce osteoporosis. So decreased hormone production is oftentimes at play. It's not always, but estrogen and testosterone are both really important hormones in bone formation in different ways. Testosterone tends to be anabolic. It grows bone. Estrogen inhibits osteoclasts. So those are the cells that remove it. So by either killing off the osteoclasts, which is called apoptosis, or inhibiting the osteoclasts, it can reduce how much bone is taken away. So it allows the osteoclasts to lay more bone down. Decreased exercise and weight-bearing activities. So there is a law in that we use in orthopedic surgery all the time called Wolff's Law, where bone is placed where tension or stress is highest. So in people, like karate, people who do karate, their bones, their metacarpals in their hand get really thick and dense because they strike objects, or hopefully not faces, but boards and things, so they get really dense. Astronauts, their bone, when they go away and they come back, their bone is osteoporotic. And that's because there's not stress across their joints kind of floating around. Gravity's diminished. And so if you're in a wheelchair or you're off your leg for even a couple of weeks, you get this thing called disuse osteopenia, which means your bone density kind of starts to diminish just very, very quickly, just a couple of weeks. Other causes are dietary deficiencies. These could be from not eating the right foods like we talked about today. So particularly vitamin D, calcium, vitamin C, potassium, and magnesium are really the precursors of a lot of bone metabolism. And then you get secondary causes. So these are things like medications we take that might be leaching our bone, malabsorption. So there's a lot of things that can cause malabsorption in the gut. Oh, that's nice. I don't have to scream at you guys anymore. And then endocrinopathies. So endocrinopathies are things like diabetes and parathyroid deficiencies and adrenal conditions and things like that. So symptoms of osteoporosis. I can barely read my notes. It's a silent disease, so it's known as a silent disease. You just don't know who has it. You can, in its late stages, kind of figure out who does and who doesn't, but it doesn't really show up because it doesn't hurt early on. So the first signs are usually detected by ER physicians, urgent cares, orthopedic surgeons who get to see an osteoporotic fragility fracture. Lower back pain can develop later in life because the bone kind of compressing, and as it compresses, it hurts. That can also happen with time because of the discs in between the vertebral bodies of your back. They become dehydrated and compresses. People become kyphotic, which is kind of stooped. It's an increased curvature of your back, and that occurs because usually fragility fractures of the back cause wedge compression, where the front of the vertebral body kind of compresses down and the back remains up, and so that kind of slowly tilts people over with time. And then loss of height, so we shrink as we age. Osteoporosis is part of that problem. Dehydration is too. But gravity takes its effect on everybody, ultimately. So what can we change? What are the risk factors that we can modify? This is really the most important part of the talk. Smoking and alcohol, I know nobody in this room has ever had an issue with that. But smoking and alcohol play a big part in osteoporosis. Smoking inhibits the body's ability to absorb calcium, and nicotine actually within vaping or cigarettes themselves, nicotine is a chemical that is named after a receptor called the nicotinic receptor in your bloodstream. And in your capillary beds, the little tiny ones that are involved in fracture healing, there's lots of nicotinic receptors. When nicotine hits that, it clamps the blood vessels down and just shuts them tight. So you don't get any blood to those areas. And so that's why it makes it very difficult to heal fractures after smoking, or after you fractured something like a hip fracture. If you are smoking, it plays a huge part in bone turnover and bone metabolism. So alcohol affects ability to absorb calcium and vitamin D in your gut. It also secondarily affects your pancreas and your liver, and compromises your ability to form the active form of vitamin D. Vitamin D starts in your skin when the sun kind of activates it, and then it is kind of activated further or changed further in the liver, which alcohol can have an effect on. And then the kidney changes it to its most active form, which is 1,25 dihydroxy vitamin D. So decreased BMI is a modifiable risk factor. So we usually think nowadays that BMI is a bad thing if your BMI is high, and it is when you're overweight. BMI is body mass index. That's your weight in kilograms over your height in meters squared. And it's really just kind of a simplified version of to tell if you're overweight or you're underweight. Well, if you're underweight, you're at risk for osteoporosis. People who have low BMIs are much more likely to have fragility fractures. And an increase, if you're lower on the scale, an increase in 1 BMI can reduce your risk of fracture or fragility fracture by about 30% in women and about 15% in men. So it's not always good to be skinny. Lack of exercise and inactivity, just what we talked about before with the Wolff's Law. You don't have any kind of weight-bearing exercise. Correctable hormone imbalances, so that's some of those secondary causes that can be improved upon if you see your physician and you kind of are involved in your health care. You want to identify those and improve upon them. Dietary deficiencies, kind of like going like classes like this and learning how to eat well and the right foods can make a big impact on your risk factors. And then medication changes. The big medications that are clearly associated with osteoporosis are things like your proton pump inhibitors, which a lot of people are taking these days. And those are used for people who have gastric ulcers and things like that. There are SSRIs, which are antidepressant medications used for depression. Seizure medications are some of the worst at leaching your bone. So not a lot of people take seizure medications, but they tend to be just really hard on your bones. And then, so that's modifiable risks. Let's go on to non-modifiable risks. So some of the things you can't change, obviously, is being over 50. Once that happens, things start to go south a little bit on your bone health. It becomes so much more important to be careful what you're eating and doing. It starts to catch up with you earlier than that usually. But family history and ethnicity, we can't change that. Late menarche, early menopause. So if you have late menarche, when you start your period late, you just have had a period where a longer period where you don't have high estrogen levels. And early menopause, again, where you stop having high estrogen levels, that just leaves more time where your bones don't see as high a level of estrogen. So your sex, even though our culture says you can change it, even if you do or try, it doesn't change the fact that women are higher risk. Hypogonadism, which is testicular dysfunction, or absence of testes, that's a condition for men, and that can happen chemically, it can happen from infections, it can happen from lots of things like undescended testes, but we need testosterone too for a good bone health. And then height. So the shorter you are, unfortunately, you tend to be at higher risk for osteoporosis.
Sure. About the oxygen level, especially with these elderly people that have a tendency to bending forward, cutting down on their oxygen level.
You mean not being able to expand your lungs?
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. But you mean, did that affect, your having osteoporosis affects how much oxygen you can kind of get in your lung capacity? Is that what you're saying?
All the thing I was thinking of is that it had to have an effect on their whole body with the oxygen level being cut down.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
And
In all
that's
kinds of
another
ways.
one of the bad situations with it.
What are the bad situations with
You're
that?
saying another situation.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. They can, yeah. One of the negatives of having osteoporosis, absolutely. So when you go to a primary care doctor and you're wanting to you have this detected, what do they go through, or what should they go through? Well, they start with a history and go over what your risks are, whether or not you have associated diseases, what are you doing for exercise, how often you're exercising, what types of exercises are you doing, again, kind of what medications are you on, can any of those be changed? What is your social history, so smoking, drinking, illicit drug use, what's your diet like, menstrual history. Surgical history is important because of the fact that, you know, if you've had your ovaries taken out, or if you've had some kind of castration procedure, which there are people out there with those issues, parathyroid surgeries, adrenal surgeries, all of those things can change your hormone balance. So on to a physical exam, they want to know what your height and weight is, what your spine looks like, a neuro exam. Balance is so important too. Not a lot of people think about balance or muscle mass as you age, but that's so important in reducing risk of falls. And muscle mass. Muscle helps in a couple of ways. One, it helps your joints to move better, so it reduces the risks of falls. But also when you fall, it's kind of like an airbag when you hit the ground. So if you have good muscle tone, that fires reflexively when you hit the ground. And so the force isn't all transmitted to your bone. The muscle absorbs that, kind of like the airbag. And then onto labs. So a lot of the labs that we'll oftentimes get early on is serum calcium and 25-hydroxyvitamin D. This is sort of where it's at in the liver, but it's the best indicator of what your vitamin D level's really at. And then thyroid and parathyroid studies, testosterone, estrogen, urine calcium are all good to check for secondary causes of osteoporosis. So a lot of people, has anybody here had a DEXA scan? Anybody gone through that?
What?
Yes. Yeah.
Is that a bone density test?
It is, yeah. And it's kind of like an X-ray. It's kind of a specialized X-ray. They take a picture of your hip and your lumbar spine, and then it kind of spits out it's calculated. There's better ways to do it now. Now there's sort of CT scans that can do it really well, but there's slightly more radiation, but you can tell kind of more accurately what the bone density is. But that spits out a score, the T-score and your Z-score. The T-score is what compares it to a 30-year-old healthy female. That's the one that most people hear about. And that's the one that determines whether you're osteopenic, which means just lower bone density, and versus osteoporotic, which is where treatment usually begins medically, or that's when it's usually encouraged by your primary care doctor. And then your Z-score is where your score is matched to your age and your sex and your race. So you kind of have an idea of where you sit amongst your peers. How bad is my bone compared to the same ethnicity and sex? So a DEXA scan is usually indicated every 2 years after the age of 65 in women. And in postmenopausal women who are less than 65. So a high risk for osteoporosis is a woman who goes into menopause in her 40s. She's high risk for osteoporosis. Very likely to get it. So if you're less than 50 with a Z-score of 2 standard deviations below the norm, you also are likely to have an indication for a DEXA scan every 2 years. And men don't tend to get these as often. We kind of forget men get osteoporosis, but they do. And oftentimes when a man gets a fragility fracture like a hip fracture, he's much more likely to die from it than a female who gets a fragility fracture. But men usually over 70 or 60 to 69 with significant risk factors have indications for a DEXA scan. And then anyone who has sort of a low traumatic hip, wrist, or lumbar spine fracture should probably get one to see where they're at. And then medical treatment, and I won't spend hardly any time on this, but basically if you have a T-score of less than 2.5 standard deviations, or greater than rather, they're going to probably recommend some type of treatment. And right before we get that, we'll talk about prevention. But the treatment that I would really recommend is preventing fractures from occurring. Osteoporosis is really a preventable disease in most people. So there are some people that cannot help it or have to take medications that reduce their bone mineral density and such, but for most of us, we can prevent it. So increased resistance in weight-bearing activities. Any guesses on how much exercise you should get after 60 a week in minutes? Any guesses or hours?
30 minutes a day, 5 days a week.
30 minutes, that's a really good guess. So 30 minutes a day, 5 days a week, that's 150 minutes, is what you're saying. Any other guesses? Huh? The recommendation really is 200 minutes per week. And it's a range from 120 to 200, so that's really good. So that's a fair amount of exercise. That means you're doing, an hour a day. Well, that's 3.5 hours, so that's a half an hour a day every day, per week. And those need to be activities that are weight-bearing or muscle strengthening type activities, not just walking to the refrigerator or your normal walking. I have patients that will tell me that. I exercise all the time. I get up to get something out of the fridge. So recommended calcium and vitamin D. So we want to make sure we have adequate dietary calcium and vitamin D. Whole foods are obviously preferred. It's much better absorbed if it's in whole food form. Anybody know what the recommended vitamin D level is per day for people who are 20 to 70 years old? It's usually somewhere between 600 and 1,000, and then over 70, it's usually 1,000 to 1,200 international units a day. Now, if you already have hypovitaminosis D or a decreased D level, then they'll probably recommend 5,000 international units a day for a time, and then recheck it. And some people who have really, really low vitamin D, you can get up to 30,000 units per week.
Does vitamin D destroy any organs if you take too much?
You can overdose on it. It's fat soluble. In fact, people are overdosing on vitamin D now more than ever because it's so recognized in our culture that vitamin D, especially with COVID, and people are taking it more because of its effects with COVID and having low vitamin D levels create increased severity in COVID. So a lot of people are taking too much. So I'd stick with the recommended amount, and then I'd get checked. If your primary care should check and kind of see where you're at. And then calcium, any ideas how much calcium per day you should get? What's that?
1,200.
Yeah, so like 1,000 to 1,200 milligrams per day. So if you just get the recommended amounts a day, if you're over 65 years old, that's a 30% decrease in hip fractures and about a 15% decrease in all fragility type fractures. That's meaningful. So that's something I would think about doing, because one hip fracture can kind of destroy your life. It's a life-changing event, or for you or your family member. So diets, foods really high in calcium and vitamin D. I didn't create a big list, but some of the ones that stand out that I tell patients about is a cup of turnips, greens, has got 200 milligrams of calcium in it. So Melinda, I think you were asking about calcium. You had like a few cups of that, you'd be set. And a cup of turnip greens shrinks down to nothing when you put it in a pan.
Can you give us a better tasting food?
You don't like turnip?
There you go. I had a list of calcium foods, if anybody wants that after I get to. Yeah. Well, most green leafy vegetables have calcium in them. A baked potato, which I think, didn't you mention baked potatoes? They're a great source of potassium and magnesium as well. And those are both important for bone turnover. And then citrus fruits, vitamin C really is a very important part of bone metabolism as well. It's been shown to decrease bone demineralization. So you want citrus fruits for your vitamin C. And then medical treatments, there's basically two, I alluded to this before, but there's two main groups. There's anti-resorptive drugs. Those are drugs that work on the osteoclast, and they try to inhibit them, kind of like estrogen does, and those are called diphosphonates. And those are the most commonly used drugs. So if you're going to be placed on a drug nowadays, that's probably the one you're going to be put on. And there's just there's just a plethora of diphosphonates out there. It's every year they come up with a different one. And then anabolic drugs is like teriparatide or abaloparatide are two medications that are anabolic. They lay bone down, so they have osteoblast stimulation. And those are infrequently used, but there are certain reasons why people use them. So that's all I have for you guys. So if you have questions for me, I'm happy to try and answer.
Did you mention quinoa?
No, I said kiwi, I think that's high calcium.
This, you can learn everything in Google, right? Quinoa is also very good for prevention of bone diseases. So it's got a lot of protein and it's very good for your bones as well.
What is it?
Quinoa.
Yeah.
Hip fractures, just say a little bit more about how they typically occur and age range where the vulnerability is high for that.
The average hip fracture age is 76, I think, in the United States. And you see them in people. I had a hip fracture 2 weeks ago in a 50-year-old female who was osteoporotic and in pretty bad shape. But we tend to see them at ages around 65 to on up. The oldest I've ever had is 103, and she did great, actually. And so they are extremely common nowadays. People are living a little longer. Osteoporosis is more significant, I think. People are doing much less exercise, much more sedate, and diet is poorer than it's ever been. So we see hip fractures. On call, I'll probably have at least 3 or 4 a week.
And how do they typically occur?
Falls from standing. Usually people lose their balance and they break their hip. They fall and break their hip. There are a lot of people think that you break your hip and then you fall down. And I think that just is kind of an interesting factoid that people sort of hold on to, but I've never seen that before. So people, they fall and they break their hip. And they just don't have the muscle mass. Oftentimes as you get older, that muscle mass diminishes too. So that plays a big part as to why people break.
And why hip fractures or so why there's such
It's where you lose a lot of bone there. And so that's why it becomes more common. There are sort of there are different types of hip fractures. Multiple places you can break that are very common, and they're treated differently. But it's an area where the bone demineralizes quickly as you age.
And why is a hip fracture such a serious injury?
It's usually a sign that you're it's like kind of a tip of the iceberg. It usually means there's a lot of things going on in one's life. So there are young people with high energy hip fractures. That's sort of there's 2 big groups. You have young people high energy, like motor vehicle collisions, motorcycle accidents, and then you have fragility fractures where you're just, you get up and you twist your knee and you fall down and break your hip. And that usually means there's other things going on. There's balance issues. Sometimes there's neurocognitive issues where people are they're starting to get confused of where they're at. There's visual changes. There's medical problems in the background. Plus there's osteoporosis and all these things. So if you take the general public, within a year of a hip fracture, the mortality rate's around 36%. So you have a hip fracture, it's high. It's because of all those things that are happening in the background. So people don't die of the hip fracture usually. It's usually something else happening at the same time.
And if you'd like to see somebody who's in really good shape that didn't break his hip when he fell down the stairs, Pastor, please stand.
That's right.
I would, but I can't.
That's right. That's a perfect example.
So walking is not enough?
No. I mean, sometimes it's all you can do. But it's not ideal. You have to walk. And so a lot of people consider being active as exercise, and that's just not right. That's not true. So being active, being busy, is not exercise. So you really have to spend time, dedicated time, to actually build muscle and increase your bone density. You can't just assume that by being active throughout the day, you're going to get those things. You just don't.
So if somebody says that, well, I do a lot of gardening,
Right.
or I do, other things, whether they're just walking around a lot, or, maybe lifting some things or whatever, that doesn't really count then, right?
No, it's really good. I mean, it's good to stay active. It's awesome to stay active. And that's the whole reason to see an orthopedic surgeon when you need it, to try to remain active. But if you don't want to see one, then you have to do more than just remain active. You have to exercise too. And it just becomes so much more important as we get older to spend time every day, 30, 45 minutes every day. If you can't, take a day off, take a Sabbath. But every day doing something, working on your aerobic capacity, and also, especially for this talk, bone density, so impact exercises to increase that stress across your bone.
Wouldn't walking be the safest?
Yeah, like I said, sometimes walking's all you can do. And if that's all you can do, then set aside time for walking. And a lot of this is just, we can get into all kinds of details of what kind of exercise you can do, but it's so variable because it's based on, if you have patellofemoral arthritis in your knee, underneath your kneecap, well, walking might be okay, but it's not going to be okay if you're walking up hills or you're doing stairs and things like that. It's going to make it worse. So it varies. Find something you like to do, and then there's just a myriad of things you can choose from. And talk to your doctor about what ones might be good for you or best for you.
Well, thinking of the different types of exercises, like swimming and stuff like that, that's not very much, it's cardiovascular, it's good.
Yeah.
But as for the tissues and stuff like that, to strengthen them, that's not the best exercise.
Right, that's the astronaut that goes up. So it doesn't help with bone density, but it helps really with cardiovascular health. It works great. So it's great exercise. I love swimming. It's just not great for bone density.
So are you saying like weightlifting and like weight bearing exercises is where you're gonna?
Yes, so increased force across the bone. Yep.
Do you have running?
No problem. Running is amazing if you can do it and you got good joints. So I don't recommend people run if they have knee or hip or ankle pathology because it's really hard on your joints. And then once you have a problem, like if you have a meniscus tear in your knee and then you run, it leads to all kinds of other stuff. So it's not a great exercise unless you've got really good joints. If you've got good joints, running is wonderful. Yeah, for bone density too. Yeah, and cardiovascular.
Are rebounders really good?
Yeah, rebound. Do you know what a
Are you
rebound is?
talking about those shoes?
No. It's like a mini trampoline.
Oh, yes. Yeah, I've never heard them called that. Yeah, I think it's good. It's good for joint lubrication. It's good for muscle tone. It's good for balance training.
Mm-hmm. And nowadays they come with handles on them,
So you can't,
so I can hold on to something because I have ankle issues.
Yes.
Oh, I thought those handles were for like doing flips over them.
Only for you.
Only for you.
Any other questions for me? And I can answer any orthopedic questions, probably a lot better than osteoporotic.
I think I'd stay away running up downstairs.
Yeah, in the darkest places.
When you're half asleep.
Well, thank you for listening, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Take a ball now.
What's that?
Stand take a ball now.
That's right. There's a little handout there, and I can get people a copy of. See, that copy of the Academy Journal is not really well printed. So if you want a really good copy of that, I think it might be a website if you guys are interested. Which is really good for exercises and things like that. Our academy, the American Academy of Orthopedic Surgeons, has a website for patients, and there's all kinds of really helpful material. And it's AAOS.com, but I think it might be on here, but I'm not sure. And the printouts just didn't end up being very good. Yeah, just Google AAOS and whatever you want. AAOS, yep, and that's on there.
Now, more and more insurance companies, like I have Blue Cross Blue Shield, they are coming out with different programs. I'm in a hinge program, and it's for joints. And they literally provide you with a tablet and sensors, and they guide you through the series of exercises for whatever injury or issue that you're having. Shoulders, knees, spine, whatever. Mine's knees. And it's a multi-week program. So I would ask your insurance company. Maybe they've got something along that, and it doesn't cost you anything. It's part of your insurance coverage. Highly recommended.
Chrissy, and did we want to thank all the ladies for the delicious food and all that?
Well, thank you everybody for coming out. I hope you enjoyed enjoy and learn the different recipes, and I hope this encourages you to try something new, you know, and you can start small and make a big difference. And I want to encourage you also, you know, the younger we start thinking about our bone health, the better it will be. So, you know, there aren't too many young people here, unfortunately, see you, but we need to start thinking about it now, you know, like now. So, we can close with prayer.
I was going to mention that I'm not sure next month if we're going to have it because there's a baby shower schedule.
Yes.
For the day that we're going to have this event. So, but I'll keep in touch on Facebook and meet up and let you know what we decide.
We have a physician coming out August 27th who's going to be talking about cancer and autoimmune issues. It's going to be a weekend event, so if you guys are interested in coming, we'd love to have you. And it'll be advertised on our
Yes, I could just, if anybody is looking for Tashino, the tea, I have quantities over here. It's not part of the program, but I'm the dealer. If you're interested in it, I have it.
Great. Thank you, dear Father, so much for blessing our time here today. I pray that you'll be with everybody throughout this week and bless them and help us to have a desire to return to the diet that you've given us. All these things we ask in the precious name of Jesus. Amen.
I just want to say thank you to the ladies and Dr. Yates for what they did today. And we want to thank you on behalf of Kernersville Seventh-day Adventist Church for coming out and joining us today. I hope you got a blessing and you got some information that can help you with your lifestyle. Thank you.